Okay, in this video, I want to give an example of a woman who is too, I don't know if I should say too empathetic, but she's very giving. And I know I'm well aware some people think that you can't be too empathetic, you can't be too giving, but she's to a point where she's a bit like a martyr. Okay. Anyway, her name is Charlene. She's a 37-year-old single woman who is a counselor. She's dedicated her whole life to helping other people. Well, dedicated her adulthood. She decided to become a counselor early on in her life, and she went to school, became a licensed professional counselor at LPC. That took years of her life, and she didn't marry. She didn't get married. She didn't have kids, and she became a counselor, as soon as she could, and then she does counseling on her own full time, and has her own practice. And then she was asked to do counseling for a church. She's for people who are more into needing it in a like a religious or spiritual fashion. So she does that too. It's all sliding scale fee kind of thing, and so she's very giving of herself and of her time. But now she's 37, and she doesn't have kids, never married, and like I said earlier, and she wants children. She's craving, to have her own children. Okay. Now, some people might think that she's like I said earlier, she might not be practicing self-care enough. And she spends most of her time thinking and worrying and concerned about others, trying to help them. And it started really, one of the ways it started off was when she was a child. She lived in a small town in small town Texas, and there's other towns in that county, but they didn't have too many schools because they didn't have that much population, to have so many schools for each town. So her town had, say, grade school, and the town next to it, the kids were bused over there. Not the same kind of busing you think, but they went to school there too. And at some point, they decided that it was, where she lived, the people were very. It has a history. And people are very, like very good, decent people. Let's just call them that. And the next town to the east, like borders on it, is where it's total opposite. They have that. Of course, it's not 100%. They have a reputation that way, and it goes back generations. That basically the one she's from, where the schools are. Goes back generations, was that when they had anybody in that town who was bad, basically, or had to go to prison, they went to the next one. They called it, that town, rightfully so back then, the Outlaws. They called the town that. And they had things like the jails, the prisons, sheriff, and like bars and such. We're talking way generations ago. You can figure it all out yourself. But where she lives, they didn't. It was all churches and places like that. Decent. It was churches in the college that became a university. Was in the one where she was. Well, anyway, she had a friend. When she was at grade school, when she was a kid, she met someone there that was in her grade. A little girl, and they were friends. They became friends. But as they got a little older, the school has decided it was too much, because the kids from the Outlaws, their kids were just too rowdy, and they were causing all kinds of problems. So the elders of the community, they moved them out, and they built their own schools for not for the Outlaws. They built schools so they could keep their kids there. Okay, now this is, yeah, the way they did the towns and everything. And of course not all people that many generations later are all bad, but they just didn't want the influence on their kids. I mean, can you imagine? But so that happened, and so she lost her friend. It was her best friend. You know, her best friend lived over there in the Outlaws, town called the Outlaws, and they weren't, able to communicate again. It wasn't like what it is today. Okay, you catching on so far? Okay. All right. Now, as the story goes, so they couldn't be friends. This wasn't, like I just said, wasn't like it is nowadays, where you can just keep in touch online, and even when you can, or they could, it's just not the same, and people trail off, especially when when you're children, you find different people and basically you move on. That even happens as adults. Okay, and this kind of thing happened, and then as the story goes, like I was saying, they ran across one another, Charlene and her friend, her former friend, and the young woman, was then just so different, and she basically had gone in a bad direction, and along this line. So she, Charlene felt so, she wanted to find out what causes this to happen, what causes, how can you help somebody who has gone in the wrong direction, who's, maybe so much of it is the environment. It's not it's a nature nurture kind of thing. Nature is biological, as and it wasn't that, but it was more the nurture, living in a bad environment, and things rub off on you, this kind of thing, or a person, not you, but a person is forced, not really forced, but somehow into not being what they want to be. Maybe they want to be more decent. Now there's a question there. A lot of nature nurture questions going on there. Nature or nurture or both. Okay. And anyway, so that's one of the reasons Charlene decided to dedicate her life to helping others and becoming a counselor. And she did, and she's a good counselor. Okay, but like I was saying from the beginning, she's too much involved in other people and not enough in her own life. Now, there is question, as I mentioned, and I think some of us, even, if I heard somebody say that, I said, well, who are you to judge? Who are you to say what you should dedicate your life to? But there is a balance, and we know it, we know that there's a balance. There are shades of gray. It's not always you have to be one extreme or another. There's a problem with people who do think in those terms, that they have to be one extreme or the other, or that other people have to be, it's all or nothing thinking, dichotomous thinking. Everybody has to be, it's got to be everybody or nobody, all or none, all or nothing. It's extreme. They don't see a middle ground. There's a problem with people that do that, especially if it's consistent. And there are exceptions to the rules, but consistently, it's all or nothing. Black or white, and they don't see the shades of gray. They just see it, like Charlene, that she has to be all giving to other people, and then she can, it fills her up, it makes her whole. But like I said, she started wanting children. Now, had she dated? Not much, but here's the story. Now, when Charlene was she had went to attended university to earn her degrees that she needed. Took years to get her PhD so she could become a counselor. Had to go through that whole program to become a counselor, a licensed professional counselor, and then to start her own practice. And after she did, she was very successful because she was very giving and she was very understanding, and she had, like I said, she had her own practice. She kind of has enough money for all this. And she came from a wealthy-ish kind of family, and So, and like I said, she dedicated some of her time to help the church, the church that she attended, for, in all of it, both her own practice and helping the church. It was on a sliding scale fee for like young people. Many of the people in that county, except for the outlaws, the people from the outlaws, many of them were, well enough off. But the younger people, like in anywhere, they're starting off and they're trying to get their whole, careers together and such, and they don't have as much money. And there's those in the middle. They're not poor, whatever. But it's not 100%. We all know that. That you become, the harder. Sometimes you can work hard and not become successful. And we all know there are, exceptions in a way. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the rule. Life chances are different for different people. But for Charlene, she had enough to start her own practice, and she became a little bit, starting off and everything, and she was successful at it, and she met a guy. Okay. While she was attending university, she did not want to get involved in any kind of relationship because, casual date here and there, but no real relationship because she was dedicating her life to earning her degrees, and she didn't want anything to basically screw it up. So then she started dating this guy after she got all settled in her job and stuff, her practice. And she met a guy and started dating. He was an attorney. Okay, he also just starting out as an attorney. And they dated for a few, for a couple of years or so, say around 2 years. And then, he wanted to get serious and to settle down and, start a family. But one of the things she learned is on the side, he was in animal rescue, which is, good. But what he wanted, and he let her know whenever they started to talk about getting engaged and such, is that he wanted a wife who would dedicate her life to him. Basically, of course, he didn't say it that way, but he wanted a woman who would help him, like his interests, such as animal rescue, which, as some might think later on, it was just so he could look good, okay, to the, society. He was an attorney, and he wanted her to dedicate, that she could still be a counselor part-time, but the rest of the time, she needed to dedicate her time to advancing his career. And he felt that it was very logical and, the way to do it, and that they would have kids and she would be the one home taking care of the kids. So he would look good, so he could advance. He said he made all kinds of reasons and everything that she would, to try to convince her that this is what she should be doing. This is how she should dedicate her life to him and their family. And she wasn't going for that. She figured out he has a little bit of an issue, or a lot of an issue going on here. And she ended it with him. She said she's not on this planet to dedicate her life to a man to advance his career. Now, some might question it. How could she be that way? And not realize that she's dedicating her life to a lot of people and not enough to herself. But she wasn't willing to dedicate it to a man where she would have, be married and have her kids. Well, she's smart, for one. But she just hadn't learned how to give herself enough. You see? She's very ambitious in her own career and to helping people. But her main goal was to help others. Some would say that she's a people pleaser. I never liked that term. That it's, that's kind of like blaming the victim to me. Seriously. So, and it does often fit into a situation where they're blaming the victim of somebody else by saying that the person was a people pleaser, so therefore people took advantage of her or him. And, it's like it's saying it's their fault for pleasing other people. We need more in this world these days. We need more people who do, not totally like Charlene, but who do give to other people. we live in a society that seems to be becoming more and more about people wanting, selfish people, only wanting for themselves and only going for things for themselves. Some just simply call it narcissistic. Very narcissistic world we're living in. Okay. I think it's more than that, but yeah. So we need more people, but we need a balance. Like I keep saying, balance. She might, think you can lean more toward the side, that you're giving. You can lean more toward that instead of, you don't have to be exactly in the middle. But if you lean a little more, but you're still taking care of yourself. What about you? You don't want to get to be, whatever age and look back and say, oh, I didn't do this, and I didn't do that in my life. And think about your future of what you were going to look back and see. And Charlene is that she wants children, and she's a 37-year-old woman, and she's worried, like we can imagine, that her clock is pretty much ticking away. And there's no rewind. So she has decided, she's going to start dedicating more time to herself. Now, some people would say that's a great idea. Would you? Okay, I think we all probably know that you don't have to be married to have kids. You don't even have to be in a relationship to have kids. Some people, some women these days, some men. There's adoption, there's all kinds of things that a person could do. But Charlene would rather, is wanting to have someone in her life, a man in her life for a relationship too. Now, I know some people that, that it would be really awful for a woman to try to get in a relationship with a man just so she can have a baby by him. Okay. Now, I can tell you that it wasn't me, there are women out there, not many, I have never heard of that many in my life, that would con a man into it. And once she became pregnant, she said adios to him. Goodbye. Some might even not tell the man that they have a child. But this is Charlene. Charlene is not that way. Charlene believes in she's a good, decent person. That's what I've always heard people like that called. Good, decent person. An upstanding person. Not someone who's a con artist. Not someone who's all self-centered and, selfish and some would say narcissistic. She would never do that to another human. Is to use them. She's not the type to use and abuse anybody. So one thing is she does want to have children, but she wants to also have the relationship and a healthy relationship. So, some would say, well, she better get busy. That's she's 37. But I have known, people who have children around that age and even a little bit older. Women. So, yeah. But it really depends a lot on, what their doctor says, kind of thing. Okay. Now, if you had Charlene as a friend, and she's a friend of yours, and you're around her age, maybe older, maybe younger, and what would you, if she asked, not just giving unsolicited advice, if she asked, what would you suggest where she could find somebody? I think a person like Charlene, it would be in a church. Okay, because somebody who, this is my opinion, I could be wrong. I could be wrong in any of this, but somebody who, this is not somebody who would go to a bar or anything like that to find somebody. It's just not that kind of person. She is a counselor for people. She has a counselor in her own practice, but also does it as a more religious, spiritual counseling for the church, too. She's not the type. I don't think, my opinion is, don't go outside, I'm not giving advice to anybody, but don't go outside of who you are to become what you're not yet. You see? And what she's not yet is married to somebody that she's going to dedicate, she's going to have a relationship with, to have kids with, that's not going to ask her like the lawyer, or tell her that she's going to be this type of wife. She needs to find somebody like-minded, and she's not going to find one like-minded in a bar, because she's not one to go to a bar. She's not the type to go to a bar. She doesn't drink. You see? I'm not talking bad about people who go to bars, but she's not the type to go to bars. You see? So, yeah, But now some people think that you should think outside of the box, your own box that you're in, your own bubble you live in. But really? Some people think that opposites attract. I always thought that was funny. Not always, but there was a big chunk of my life I would say, well, people say opposites attract, but they're also birds of a feather flock together. Okay? So, yeah, you see what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get to the end of this video. But this, by the way, if you haven't figured it out, it's a hypothetical fictional story. I would never talk about somebody named Charlene. My examples when I use a person, they are hypothetical fictional. And we all know that anything that's truly fictional, this is truly fictional, any resemblance to any person living or dead, any situation, event, so forth, is purely coincidental. Coincidences happen. And I sometimes get surprised by that. I make a video, and at the same time I walk in and I see maybe somebody else has talked about the same subject, but that's different. And but coincidences like that happen because, especially with people in the same time in their life or something, and they've been watching the same show or whatever, and they just happen to be watching that same show. They have the same interests in such topics. But if it happens, as I've said in many videos, that like if I went in and put up a video and somebody had the same thing over and over and over every time I did, right after it put up the same subject, that's too coincidental. So, but coincidences do happen. I'm not one to think otherwise. I think that they do happen. So, anyway, I got off on that one in that direction. But, yeah, these are coincidental. Like I'm doing these videos, and I have some written up. Some I've done in writing on PowerPoint slides and made videos of them. And some I've done them verbal like this. And some of them I still have on paper, notepads, whatever I had. I've changed to composition books lately. I'm writing stories for examples. And this woman, Charlene, is going to play a big part in a story because she is a counselor. And she is, at this point in her life, this fictional character. But anyway, what would you suggest? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'll talk to you on another video. Bye.